We're in this very interesting canto, Canto 4 of Book 7, the triple soul forces, in which Savitri, in her quest, going deeper and deeper into herself to find her soul, she encounters these three goddesses. Sri Aurobindo tells us they are seated in inner mind, and they represent three powers of the soul. Each of those goddesses, as they introduce themselves to Savitri, they say, "O Savitri, I am thy secret soul." But we find out that they are not her soul as such, they are powers of the soul, three divine powers of the soul. And we'll discuss at the end of the canto what these three powers represent. But they are presented in a similar pattern. First of all, the mother of sorrows, of divine pity and compassion, who expresses the mission that she's been given by the Lord, but she says, "He gave me love, but he did not give me the strength to save. I can sympathize, but I can't solve the problems." And these three divine powers of the soul acting in the world, each of them has their limitation. Even all together, they are not the full power of the soul. And each of them expresses in turn their powers, their mission, their limitation. And then Savitri becomes aware of, in each case, the same divine quality as it is expressed in a perverted and distorted way in the egoistic lower human nature. So we saw that the man of sorrows, echoing the mother of sorrows with her divine resignation and compassion, he is just full of self-pity and rage and envy at his helplessness. He feels like a victim in the universe. And then we have Savitri's reply to the Madonna, to her divine part. And in each case she says, "I have to go further, but I will return and I will bring you what you are missing." So we have read the Mother of Sorrows and we've read the Mother of Might, of power, who strengthens the noble and unselfish souls, who blesses the fair and the fortunate, but then also sometimes destroys their good fortune in order to help them to move further. So I'm going to read on from there, from line 278 at the bottom of page 510. She spoke, and from the lower human world an answer, a warped echo, met her speech. The voice came through the spaces of the mind of the dwarf Titan, the deformed, chained god who strives to master his nature's rebel stuff and make the universe his instrument. The ego of this great world of desire claimed earth and the wide heavens for the use of man, head of the life it shapes on earth, its representative and conscious soul, and symbol of evolving light and force, and vessel of the Godhead that must be. A thinking animal, nature's struggling lord, has made of her his nurse and tool and slave, and pays to her as wage and emolument, inescapably by a deep law in things, his heart's grief and his body's death and pain. His pains are her means to grow, to see and feel. His death assists her immortality. A tool and slave of his own slave and tool, he praises his free will and his master mind, and is pushed by her upon her chosen paths. Possessor, he is possessed, and ruler, ruled. Her conscious automaton, her desires dupe. His soul is her guest, a sovereign, mute, inert. His body, her robot. His life, her way to live. His conscious mind, her strong, revolted serf. The voice rose up and smote some inner sun. You will begin, Dhanalakshmi.
She spoke, and from the lower human world, an answer, the vast echo, made her speech. The voice came through the spaces of the mind, of the dwarf titan, the deformed, chained god, who strives to master his nature's rebel stuff and make the universe his instrument.
So she, this is the mother of might, she spoke, and this echo to her powerful speech comes up from the lower human world. A warped echo, it's twisted and perverted. Warped, it means not straight. So this voice is the voice of the dwarf titan. A titan is a superhuman being, but this is a small one. He's both at the same time. His voice comes to Savitri through the spaces of the mind. And this dwarf titan, Sri Aurobindo describes him as a deformed, chained God. There is something divine in him, but he is deformed. It's another word that means twisted, spoiled. something wrong about him. He's not perfect. And he is chained. He strives, he's making an effort, he's full of energy, just like the mother of might. He strives to be in control of his own stuff, to exercise the power of life and mind over matter. He wants to conquer and rule the whole universe and make it his instrument. Suresh.
The ego of this great world of desire climbed earth and the wide heavens for the use of man, head of the life it shapes of on earth. Its response
Representative
and conscious soul and symbol of evolving light and force and vessel of the Godhead that must be.
So first he says that this voice, this deformed, chained God, represents the ego of this great world of desire. This means that although he has some divinity in him, he's claiming all that for himself, self-centered. No? And what moves him is desire. He wants human beings to be able to use everything in the earth and everything in the heavens. He thinks that man is the leader, the leading species, is the head of the life which this great world of desire shapes on earth. He's the representative of that world. He's the conscious soul of it. At the same time, he's the symbol of evolving light and force. All the consciousness and power of consciousness which is involved in the material universe is evolving, and man at the moment is the symbol of that evolving process. And humanity, individual human beings, are the vessel, the container of the individualized divine that must be, that has to be expressed through all the many beings of the world, eventually in the course of evolution. Is it clear? Anybody would like to ask anything? Then we'll go on. Bhavana?
A thinking animal, nature's struggling law, has made of her his nurse and food and slave, and paid to her as aid and emolument, inescapably by a deep law in things. His hound's grief and his body's death and pain. His pains are her means to grow, to see and feel. His death assists her immortality.
So here Sri Aurobindo is explaining to us what man is, what human beings are. Each of us is a thinking animal. Each of us is a member of this human race, which is the leading species in the world at the moment. We are the lords of nature, but we don't have mastery. We are struggling. But what we have done with nature is we have made use of her as our nurse. We allow her to feed and nourish us. We use her however we feel like. We use her as a slave without respect, without gratitude. And yet, because of the way things are organized, we're not allowed just to steal the gifts of nature. We have to pay something back to her. So, without realizing it, we have to pay back to the Earth Mother as a wage. A wage is what you pay to somebody for the work that they do, no? That's also what emolument means, no? Maybe you pay wages to a blue-collar worker and an emolument to a white-collar worker. No? These are emolument salaries, payments. No? He can't help paying back to her because he's compelled to do so by this deep law in things. And what he pays her is his debt of suffering and our need to die and to know pain. And these pains that we human beings suffer help nature in her evolving process. Man's pains are her means to grow, her way of developing, becoming more conscious, to see and to feel. And when we die, we move on. We leave something behind and we move on. So the death of the human individual assists her immortality, the immortality of nature. Something, when we leave the body, we pass on to nature something which she uses for her growing process. Sri Ramalu, would you like to read? Yes. So this is kind of paradoxical, no? We use nature, we mistreat nature terribly. We use her as a tool and a slave. But we ourselves are tools and slaves of nature. That's our relationship. She uses us. We don't even realize how much we are enslaved to nature. We are very proud of our free will and our master minds that are so clever. But at the same time, we are just being pushed by her on the paths that she chooses. We think that we are choosing our own paths. We don't realize how far she is pushing us. So we possess all this, we rule it, but although we are the possessors, we ourselves are possessed, and we are ruled by nature. We are, he says, conscious automatons. An automaton is an old word for a mechanical device which does some kind of action. Nowadays we call them robots. An automaton. You wind it up by clockwork and then it does something. It walks, or it works, or it just shows how clever you are. But this automaton, this human automaton that's just wound up by nature and set on its way, is conscious, at least half conscious. And we, although we have our own desires, we are the dupes of nature's desires and intention. A dupe is somebody who is deceived, made use of by being deceived. You know, you get somebody, you manipulate them to do what you need them to do. So that is how nature deals with us. She gets her work done through human beings. Is it Ellen sitting at the back there? Would you read? Yes?
His soul is rugged, a sovereign will in his body her robot, his life her way to live, his conscious mind her strong revolted self.
Yes. So the soul of the individual, the divine soul in the human being, is the guest of nature. Actually, the soul is supposed to rule nature. The soul is supposed to be the master, the sovereign. But in our present state of evolution, this sovereign, this ruler, is mute, silent, inert. He doesn't act. He just does or follows or observes what nature is doing. Our bodies, here he uses this word robot, just made for her purposes, made to do what she needs us to do. And our lives are the way in which nature lives. We have this conscious mind, half-conscious mind. This is, he says, her strong, revolted serf. The Russians here know what a serf is. It's a peasant who was tied to the land, who had no other rights, not much choice. But this particular serf here, our conscious mind, is very strong, it has powers, and it revolts against the control of nature. It tries to get its own way. Oljena.
The voice rose up and smote some inner sun. I am the heir of the forces of the earth. Slowly I made good my right to my estate. A growing woodhead in her
Divinized mud.
I come a claimant to the throne of heaven.
Yes. So he expresses, just as each of these Madonnas did, he expresses who he is and what does he represent. So he says, I'm the heir of the forces of the earth. I've inherited all nature's forces. The heir, you know, when the father or the king dies, his eldest son receives everything. That's the heir. So I am the heir. I've received all these forces of the earth. And slowly I am making good my right to my estate. I'm proving that I am worthy of this inheritance. My estate, all this position and responsibility that I've inherited. I'm learning and showing that I am worthy of that position. Slowly I make good my right to my estate. He says, I'm a growing Godhead, a growing individualized divinity in her divinized mud. This mud, this matter that we are made of, which has been partly divinized. And this diviner part of us is growing stronger and stronger. I'm climbing up and I'm a claimant. I'm claiming not only the earth, but also the throne of heaven. I'm going to rule the gods and all the cosmic forces. I didn't explain this line 305. The voice rose up, comes up from the depths, and smote, to smite, means to give a blow. So it expresses itself with violence against some inner sun, that light and force and heat and creative power which the Mother of Might represents. He's expressing his revolt and anger against that.
Slowly I make good my right to my how to argument.
To make good, if I make something good, I show that I have a, well, in this case, he's making good my right. He is justifying, proving that he's worthy to have this position of being the heir to the forces of the earth. Yeah? If you make something, you can make a promise good, means you fulfill it. Perhaps that's the closest word. So here it is, slowly I'm fulfilling my right to rule the earth. Yeah? Something like that. To my estate. So the heir inherits an estate. It can mean the land which he inherits, but it can also mean the position, the rank in society which he inherits. So he's inherited this position of being the ruler of the earth. And slowly he says, I'm proving that I have the right to do that, that I'm worthy, fit to do that. Yeah? Bomb?
The last form of the earth I stand up for slow millennium waited for my God. Although I live in time,
Besieged. Yeah.
Preterius honor my body and soul. House on a little step on the star. For me and my use, the universe was named.
Yes. So he says, I'm the last born of the earth. I'm the youngest child of the earth. If we think of the evolution of species, humanity is the youngest. And in many fairy stories from all cultures, the youngest, the littlest one, is the hero, who saves all the others. So he says, I'm the last born of the earth, but now I'm leading. I'm the one who is looking after all the rest. And all those millions and thousands and millions of years of earth history was waiting for my birth. I'm the one who is fulfilling that long pregnancy of earth. He says, I live in time, and I'm besieged by death. To be besieged means to be under attack. We are all under attack by death and dissolution all the time. We live here in time. And we are only precarious owners of our bodies and souls. Precarious means it's not safe. We can lose our body and our soul at any time. We are not sure and certain. It can be gone, can be taken away from us. And here I am, he representing the human race. Here our home is just on a little speck, a tiny little bit of matter in the midst of all the stars in the material universe. But all this universe, this vast material universe, was made for me and for my use. That is how he's seeing it. This is his egoistic point of view, that all this vast material universe has been made only for our use. Lopamudra, will you read, please? Did Arti read? I missed Arti. Sorry, let Arti read. Sorry.
Immortal
Spirit.
spirit in the rising clay are gods, still unevolved in human form. Even if he is not, he becomes in me.
This is very interesting thought, no? Correctly, he says, a human being is an immortal spirit in this perishable clay, this clay or mud of our matter, of the material of our bodies. And it's also correct when he says, I am God, still unevolved in human form. We have further evolution to do before we can express what the divine qualities that we've been created to express. But then he says, even if God doesn't exist, he's becoming, he is showing himself, or he's going to become in me. Yeah? So there we see the warp, the distortion, the twisting. There's something true and there's something crooked. This is the ego, yes. Yes, now Lopamudra.
The sun and moon are lights upon my path. Air was invented for my lungs to breathe. Condition as a wide and honest space for my winged chariot's wheels to cleave a road. The sea was made for me to swim and sail and bear my golden commerce on its back. Love's loving are my pleasures gliding through. I laugh at its black state of fate and death.
So this is expressing the idea that this whole universe and every aspect of it exists only for the satisfaction of human beings. The sun and the moon, they are lights on my path. Why do we have air? So that human beings can breathe it. Air was invented for my lungs to breathe. And this air has been made in such a way that it's a limitless space for my winged chariot's wheels to cleave a road. To cleave means to cut. So the airplanes take off and they cut a road through the air. And as if the atmosphere was there for that very purpose. The sea, too, was made for me, for us human beings, to swim and to sail our ships on. And to sail our ships for trade purposes, to bear my golden commerce, all this rich exchanges that goes on. It's still much of it is carried on the sea, no? Although much has now gone up into the air. And he says the sea laughs, it enjoys itself. Cloven, this is again like cut. To cleave means to split. There are some animals that have cloven hooves, like goats and pigs, as if the foot is split, cloven. So when we sail our pleasure boats on the sea, our gliding keel. The keel is the bottom part of the boat. He says the sea laughs when I sail over it. And he says, I laugh, we human beings laugh at the threat of the sea. Even people seem to enjoy that danger and threat and peril of the sea. You know, people sail single-handedly around the world, and they do these great races through the Southern Ocean, which are extremely dangerous. It's as if we laugh, we enjoy that challenge of the sea. Alexei.
The earth is my floor, the sky my living roof. All was prepared for me as by an age. God made experiments within all shapes. Then only, when all was ready, I was born.
Yes. So it's again expressing this completely ego-centered view of things. No? The earth is for me to stand on. The sky is the roof of our life. And everything has been prepared over so many ages. God was making experiments with animal shapes. Only when everything had been worked out, then only this perfect human being was born. A lady at the back there, do you like to read? Next to Bon, do you like to read?
Yes.
Yes, please.
I was born weak and small and ignorant, a helpless creature in a difficult world, traveling through my brief years with death at my side. I have grown greater than nature, wiser than God.
Thank you. So this also sounds true, no? We are born very weak and small and ignorant. We are helpless creatures in a difficult world. We travel through our brief years. We don't have many years in a lifetime. And death is always at our side. But despite all that, I, the human being or the human race, have grown greater than nature, more powerful than nature, and even wiser than God. I know better. You know? It reminds me of a story which Dr. Premananda Kumar sometimes tells about her grandmother, who used to complain sometimes that if I could get my hands on God, I would tell him what a mess he's made of things. No? And her husband said, well, that's why he's arranged it so that you can't get your hands on him. Wiser than God. Ganga Lakshmi.
I have made real what she never dreamed. I have seized her powers and harnesses for my work. I have shaped her metals and new metals made. I will make glass and raiment out of the lake, make iron velvet, water and breakable stone, like God in his astuce of artist skill, mold from one primal plasm protein forms, in single nature, multitudinous
Lives.
and that imagination can conceive. In mind, intangible, remote, new, in matters plastic, solid, and concrete.
Yes. So this is where he's somehow justifying that he's grown stronger than nature and wiser than God. I've done all kinds of marvelous things that nature never dreamed of. I've seized hold of the powers of nature, like magnetism and electricity and gravity. Seized her powers and harnessed her for my work. That's what we do with an animal that works for us. We put a harness on it and drive it the way that we want it to go. I have shaped her metals. We've extracted metals from the earth and we've learned how to shape them. And he says, I've made new metals. This is also true. And he says, I will make glass and raiment out of milk. I remember one of the people who came and spoke to us about Savitri. They took this theme of the science in Savitri. He said that there really is something like this, that the idea that we can take the elements, which are, for example, in milk, and we can rearrange them a bit, and we can make them in such a way that we can use them like glass, like perspex, or something like that, or clothing. This is the old idea that the alchemists had, that if they could find the primal plasm, they could create any substance, and particularly what they were interested in was making gold. But it's also interesting maybe to make something as hard as iron, as soft and gentle as velvet. Water, which is always moving. How can we take those elements which are there in water and make them unbreakable stone, something extremely hard? So just like God, in his astute of artist skill, somebody who is astute is very, very clever. So the skill of God the craftsman, the God the artist. I will be like that. I will be able to shape out from one primal plasm. Plasm is some simple primary organization of matter. So taking that, be able to mold it into protean forms. This word protean, it comes from the name of a god in Greek mythology, Proteus. And he was a shape shifter. If you tried to get hold of him, he would change his shape. So he would become a serpent or a tree or a needle, or, he could change his shape so that one couldn't hold on to him. I think it's one of the labors of Hercules, or one of those great heroes. He had to hold on to Proteus no matter what shape he took, So protean shapes, many, many changing shapes out of one primal form of matter.
Is there alchemist?
Sorry?
Is there alchemist? Proteus? No?
Well, the alchemists had this kind of ideal, yes. They thought, you can say it was a kind of intuition of what might become possible. But the alchemists didn't know about the elements. Now the chemists have told us about the elements, and there are scientists all the time experimenting, creating new substances. So in single nature, nature in a way is all one, but many, many different lives. And he says, everything that imagination can conceive. Imagination is a faculty of mind. Whatever we can imagine with our minds. We imagine these things in our minds. In our minds, they can't be touched. we can't hold them. But he says, I will make it, remold it anew. All those imaginary things, I will remold in matters, plastic, in this shapeable material, making it solid and concrete so that it can be touched, that it's strong and firm to our hands.
But in the divine life, in Superman account, the solid matter return into plastic. That's what
becomes plastic. Yes, yes. This is a kind of mastery, to be able to find the primal plasm, identify that, and then to reshape it. So we'll stop there today. So we can go back to where we started, line 278, and read these lines together.
She spoke, and from the lower human world an answer, a warped echo, met her speech. The voice came through the spaces of the mind of the dwarf Titan, the deformed, chained God who strives to master his nature's rebel stuff and make the universe his instrument. The ego of this great world of desire claimed earth and the wide heavens for the use of man, head of the life it shapes on earth, its representative and conscious soul, and symbol of evolving light and force, and vessel of the Godhead that must be. A thinking animal, nature's struggling lord, has made of her his nurse and tool and slave, and pays to her as wage and emolument, inescapably by a deep law in things, his heart's grief and his body's death and pain. His pains are her means to grow, to see and feel. His death assists her immortality. A tool and slave of his own slave and tool, he praises his free will and his master mind, and is pushed by her upon her chosen paths. Possessor, he is possessed, and ruler, ruled. Her conscious automaton, her desires dupe. His soul is her guest, a sovereign mute, inert. His body her robot, his life her way to live, his conscious mind her strong revolted serf. The voice rose up and smote some inner sun. I am the heir of the forces of the earth. Slowly I make good my right to my estate. A growing Godhead In her divinized mud I climb, a claimant to the throne of heaven. The last born of the earth, I stand the first. Her slow millenniums waited for my birth. Although I live in time besieged by death, precarious owner of my body and soul, housed on a little speck amid the stars, for me and my use the universe was made. Immortal spirit in the perishing clay, I am God still unevolved in human form. Even if he is not, he becomes in me. The sun and moon are lights upon my path. Air was invented for my lungs to breathe, conditioned as a wide and wall-less space for my winged chariot's wheels to cleave a road. The sea was made for me to swim and sail, and bear my golden commerce on its back. It laughs, cloven by my pleasure's gliding keel. I laugh at its black stare of fate and death. The earth is my floor, the sky my living's roof. All was prepared through many a silent age. God made experiments with animal shapes. Then only when all was ready I was born. I was born weak and small and ignorant, a helpless creature in a difficult world, travelling through my brief years with death at my side. I have grown greater than nature, wiser than God. I have made real what she never dreamed. I have seized her powers and harnessed for my work. I have shaped her metals and new metals made. I will make glass and raiment out of milk, make iron velvet, water unbreakable stone. Like God in his astute of artist skill, mould from one primal plasm protean forms. In single nature, multitudinous lives. All that imagination can conceive, in mind intangible, remould anew in matters plastic, solid and concrete.